and tomorrow will be about the social impact tomorrow, so might be interesting for you as well. All right, we still have a number remarkable distinguished speakers over here, and moderator will come and share innovative dynamic role of the blockchain that I believe that it will be very impact in very near future globally. And many of you might have acknowledged this situation of the global trade currently. So this will lead us to the next session, which is the panel discussion on the topic of transforming trade, how enterprise blockchain will revolutionize global trade finance. Well, to save the time, I would like to introduce our panelists now. We have, our panelists. We have the Managing Director, Head of Asia at R3. Of course, Mr. Klaus Wegner once again will come up and be one of the speakers. Yes, please. And we still have Head of the Trade Finance Product Management at Bangkok Bank, คุณพินทุวรรณเกษินขอโทษนะคะขออภัยค่ะ Vice President and Manager of Global Payment Services Department or GPSD at Bangkok Bank ค่ะคุณพงษ์โบคาพุทธิเบริยานะคะ and Head of Data Management Solution at Diginex Mr. Thomas Glaxmans. This wonderful gentleman will be the moderator for this session. So if you're ready, please give them a big round of applause once again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I leave the stage for all of them.
Great, thank you. It's good to be back following my talk this morning. So just to kick things off, as everyone knows, global trade is skyrocketing, especially in this part of the world. Along with that huge increase in trade comes a lot of the risks to both exporters and suppliers when it comes to settling these payments. Trade finance obviously has an important role to play there, and so how do you improve trade finance? What technologies will be available, and what role does blockchain have to play in this? So that will be the premise of this panel. So I'd like to kick things off first of all and explore what are some of the major challenges with the way that trade finance works currently today globally, but also here in Thailand and across ASEAN. So Pintuan, if you could address that topic.
Yes, thank you, Thomas. When you talk about trade finance, it's about buying and selling goods cross-border. So basically, the seller would like to get paid what they ship, and the buyer would like to make sure that they get the goods that they pay for. But when you talk about trade finance, especially cross-border, it's about the need of trust and transparency. So when you're talking about how the seller is going to make sure they get paid, the paper needs to be introduced to make sure that at this moment the paper is the only trusted media that all the people in the ecosystem use to conduct the business. So each party has to produce the paper, has to prepare the papers in terms of application, certificate, invoice, bill of lading, and to ship the original and the copy across border. And to make sure that there is no fraud and no duplication of the paper, so the additional process has to be introduced to make sure that all of these papers are authenticated and no duplication. And another thing about trade finance is there are a lot of parties involved in the trade finance. Besides buyers and sellers, we have banks, customs, shipping, insurance. All of these people have produced their own paper, and sometimes the data have to rekey in the system multiple times, the same data. And in some cases, most of the data are already outside our system. And some countries already introduced the digital paperless process. When it works only within their country, when it's cross-border, then we deal with different standards. And when you talk about ASEAN, most of the time the goods arrive, like for us, we conduct the pilot that we're going to talk next. the parallel between Bangkok and Indonesia. Most of the time, the goods has already arrived, but the document is still in transit because of all of this process. So those are the key pain points. And what we look for is how the blockchain is going to address all of these pain points.
Yeah, so that's an important question. So Carl, could you give us an idea of how blockchain is playing a role in addressing some of these challenges in trade finance and the way it can have improvements over existing technologies that could exist already?
Yeah, I mean, with blockchain, you have the ability, and we're looking at supply chain, we're looking at the ability to see data, to prove data, not only make it electronic, but prove that it's verifiable, that it's true earlier on. So you can bring it into the transaction, you can manage it electronically, you could have data inheritance, so it's keyed in once, not multiple times, so it's more efficient. But also the fact is, if you bring it in electronically and it's verifiable, right, through the blockchain, through consensus, then all that data now is available to manipulate. It's available to check much quicker. And that's a tremendous advancement over, and again, in the past where you had different silos, right? And a company would have it that silos, each the freight forwarder, logistics supplier, the shipper, all different silos, right? And as Kun Pintuan said, I mean, to bring, each country has their different regulations, and I remember working on a APEC paperless trading initiative in 2004, right? And I remember we talked about being finished in 2005. Well, it never really happened, right? And it was hard back then. It's still hard now, but blockchain gives the opportunity for collaboration. Blockchain's a team sport, right? And it's between countries, between banks, between different parties. They're all beginning to work together.
And within the realm of blockchain technology, digital currencies has an important role to play as well. So Pong Boka, could you give your view on where you think digital currencies could help to improve the efficiencies in trade finance?
The problem today for related to payment, cross-border payments, which is in the trade transaction, I think is the settlement. Payment processing is fast. Settlement is not. This may cause delay in credits. I think the major problem that we see in the processing of settlement is that usually it involves various parties, multiple entities. There's no visibility on the settlement process. There is need for liquidity management and also for reconciliation on the receiving part. Blockchain technology may help on this. Especially if we introduce the blockchain-based digital currency, it will help a lot on this cause of delays. The first one on the multiple parties, blockchain technology are able to advise all the parties immediately on the transactions. On the visibility, blockchain has the capability of introducing track and trace, like today we see in the logistics sector. There is capability on building automated liquidity solutions and including netting. Also, it will help the reconciliation process to be automated and in real time. So I think this would help a lot in the trade transaction.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And if we bring the topic closer to home here in Thailand, there seems to be a lot of initiatives going on. So Pintuan, if you could shed some light on what you're seeing here in Thailand and what role Bangkok Bank is playing.
Yeah, very happy to. I think in the previous session, if anybody of you were in here, you have seen Carl touch on the Voltron. So Bangkok Bank is one of the founding members of Voltron. We started talking about this 2 years ago, and 6 months ago we have conducted the test and development. So we have applied Voltron on our real life transactions. So it's a shipment between Thailand to Indonesia, and we conducted on Corda, the R3 platform. What we have done is, in the past, let's say the customer have to, if they complete the decision to buy and sell goods, they have to come to the bank, so the buyer come to the bank to request to issue the LC. So if anybody of you don't know about trade finance, let me explain that. And then the issuing bank has to issue the LC to the advising bank, and then the advising bank advise the LC to the exporter. So this will take about a few days. And a lot of checking, reconciliation, interpretation between the buyer, the banks, two banks, and then the exporter. With blockchain, we completely transform the whole process. So everybody is on the Corda network. And it starts off with the buyer and the seller agree on the term and condition of the LC, and everything is recorded on Corda. So the data is updated simultaneously, instantly on the Corda network. And when everybody agree on the term and condition, it was sent to the issuing bank. And when the issuing bank do the normal procedure of banking, so check the credit line of the buyer to make sure that they have the money to fund the LC, then the LC is issued. So all the parties on the network will see the LC that has been advised instantly. And this process alone will save a few days for all four parties, from a few days to a few hours. And at the time of shipment, as we said earlier, the paper is one of the pain of trade finance. Now everything can be done on the electronic. So all the document can submit via the data Corda platform, and the checking, the reconciliation is done on the Corda platform. This process alone is also save a few days, because we can cut the DHL, the courier, the transit with the document. So when the goods arrive at the port in Indonesia, the payment has been executed. The goods can be cleared from the port immediately. The customer is very happy with this process, because they really see the benefit of have all the data reconcile and generate on the system.
So it sounds like there were a lot of benefits achieved through this pilot.
Yes.
Were there any challenges that you saw from actually getting this pilot over the line and actually getting it finished?
I think at the beginning, we select the customer carefully. So we select the customer who are keen to try. They are the innovator within their area as well. So our customer is GC Marketing, who is a flagship of chemical of PTT Group. And we engage them, educate them, and make sure that they know exactly. So when we conduct the pilot, we have to go through the whole process. That they are the exporter. They need to make sure that when they ship the goods, they get paid. The LC that issued by blockchain is as good as the LC that they receive on paper via the bank. And this happened between Bangkok Bank, Thailand, and Indonesia. So we educate on both sides. And the buyer over there is also very cooperative. And I think, the most, it's not a challenge, but it's next step. The next step is how can we adopt this in production? So as Carl said earlier, there are a lot of parties involved. So now we have Borero and SDoc as part of Voltron. So these two are the company who generate electronic BL. And there are a lot of initiatives in Thailand to promote the digital paperless process. For example, the National Trade Platform, which is going to introduce additional documents that can come on the platform. And Bank of Thailand is very helpful. They introduced a sandbox to accelerate the whole adoption of blockchain.
Fantastic. So it sounds like there's a lot of bright next steps for Bangkok Bank in terms of rolling this out. So if I just zoom out a little bit more and look at the ASEAN region. So Carl, where do you see some of the opportunities and challenges for rolling out the adoption of trade finance and blockchain across the region?
Well, again, it's as Pintuan said. I mean, the Thailand and Bank of Thailand. I mean, I think it's definitely the leader in this. Bank of Thailand has supported also doing central bank digital currency projects. Intanon, they're doing their second one. They just announced their third one is going to be a cross-border with Hong Kong, with HKMA. So again, it goes to the payments piece. You have the trade finance and the payments piece. But in Asia, we've seen projects. We've done projects with Hong Kong, with MAS in Singapore. Bank of Korea and Bank of Japan have also done projects as well. So we see a lot of the regulators taking the first step, and the real important first step is first learning, right? Testing it out. When they do a project, the most important thing is actually not the technology, it's the regulatory impact, right? It's the report that says what regulations might have to change if we went this route, right? Because they need to understand before they decide yes or no what they're going to open up, the implications, the monetary implications for the country, if they open up things. So I think that in ASEAN there's quite a lot of collaboration, and that bodes well for ASEAN as a region to be more competitive. But I think there's also each country has, they want to collaborate, but they want to be first, and that's always going to be the challenge, in working together. But again, like I said before, blockchain's a team sport. You can't do it by yourself, and so this is interesting. And even when R3 started, I mean, to have 130 banks and regulators collaborating, banks normally don't collaborate, right? They're very die-hard competitors, right? But now they're realizing to be more efficient, to fight against the fintechs, right? They're going to have to be more efficient. They're going to have to learn how to manage data to delight their customers in different ways. And so collaboration is the way to do it.
So yeah, on that note, Pongboka, how do you think that collaboration can take place? What do the stakeholders need to do to come together and actually push this forward?
POCs, as Carl mentioned, it should be a cooperative, because what we are doing is trying to prove that blockchain is reliable, secure, efficient, and is scalable enough to replace the existing technology. So I think what we see is today the regulators, the biggest barrier for blockchain is that it's not regulated yet. Regulators, they know the benefits of blockchain. They see if we adopt blockchain, it would have far-reaching consequence on the economy, on the financial system, on the monetary system. Even it can help improve the welfare of the citizens. But on the other hand, they also see that any implementation that is not fully researched could cause a risk in the financial stability. This could be even internationally, not just only domestic. As a bank, I think what we trying to do is that we try to start our own POCs. We participate. We have to be in the ecosystem. We have to help the regulators, the market, to understand the benefits, to be more confident that blockchain is working. And I think this would take time, but eventually I think regulators will be more comfortable, and they will be starting to endorse the blockchain-based digital currency in the future.
So on that note, Pintuan, could you talk about the role that Bank is playing in part of this ecosystem in terms of driving it moving forward?
Yeah. I think one role is like to be here today. So we try to educate and create awareness of the benefit of blockchain, and we have the real use case that we have conducted successfully. So at this moment we talk to customers who are keen to learn, and interested to conduct further study with us. And at the same time, we also engage the regulators. So they would like to know what are the risks and how can we going to mitigate that. So we can explain to them exactly what are the risks, which is lower than the current one, and how we prepare to mitigate all the risk. And next is, because trade finance is not for domestic, so we also have to talk to international bodies and make sure that they go with us at the same pace. So and at the same time, we also educate other banks in Thailand as well, and try to convince them what are the benefits of conduct trade finance on blockchain.
Oh, that's great. And Carl, R3 started off as a consortium of various different banks and organizations, but now when we look at trade finance specifically, what role is R3 playing, not just here in ASEAN, but globally in terms of driving the adoption of blockchain moving forward in that ecosystem?
In trade finance, I mean, trade finance is just a small portion of supply chain, of the whole purchase to delivery, that whole workflow, right? And so the banks have been working on trade finance and how they can help their customers do financing earlier, do more financing for customers, trust their customers more because they have more verifiable data. Maybe they can give higher rate, either higher percentage or lower rates. But from an R3 perspective, we're looking at the whole flow, right? And there's a workflow from very beginning to end. And actually what we're trying to do is we have at least 12 different trade finance systems already building on Corda. But a lot of other supply chain, other companies are building as well. And what we try to do is give advice, because if you have all these points and they all need to be fulfilled to get a complete transaction, right? We try to give advice to a company that if 2 or 3 companies are building the same thing, well, why don't you build a little bit of this with a little bit of KYC, or a little bit of this with a little something else? Because if you can get 1, 3, and 5 are all independently good, but if you get 3, 4, and 5 together, they could be really powerful, right? So it's helping the ecosystem collaborate with each other to make a more powerful solution that, again, helps the ecosystem build on itself. And so as we look at, the roadmap, trying to help companies work together and collaborate, and we're seeing that. Voltron is a good example. Companies, like I said, Bolero, S-Stocks, companies say, I want to join Shinsei, that I want to join Voltron because you have this part of the ecosystem, I have this part. Together, we can have a much better and more fulfilling process for our customers.
Okay, no, that sounds like there's a lot of moving parts there, and definitely it's going to take time, but there's a lot of movement already. Actually, Pintuan, tomorrow I'm aware that there's a couple of workshops organized by Bangkok Bank on this topic. Could you provide some info for the audience?
At 10 o'clock, we're going to have a presentation at R3 booth. So our team will talk about our own digital trade finance initiatives. And then at 4 o'clock, we're going to have a workshop. I just explained briefly about the pilot that we have conducted. At the workshop, we're going to deep dive into what have we done and what are the benefits. And so we would like to invite the audience who are interested in learning more about the trade finance blockchain, the real use case. Yeah, please join us.
Yeah, so we'll look out for those workshops tomorrow. So actually, I'm aware we still have 15 minutes, and I've exhausted all the questions that I wanted to answer. We kind of powered through them pretty quickly. So I want to open up to the audience now. If you have any questions specific about the role of blockchain in trade finance, and if you could direct your question either at all the panelists or a specific panelist, that would be very useful. So if the facilitators could help me with the microphones, that would be great. So are there any questions from the audience?
Remember, there's no silly questions. Blockchain is pretty new, right? We're all learning, right? So again, ask anything.
Yeah, there's one question from the audience. Yeah. Could one of the facilitators help me to give this gentleman a microphone, please?
I guess this is probably for all of you, but maybe Carl. With regard to Libra, it's quite interesting. There's, the Amazon's not there, Microsoft's not there, Twitter's not there. There's no traditional banks in the thing, and I wondered whether you felt like Libra does have application in trade finance or more, industrial or commercial banking areas, and could you comment on why you think there are no banks, no Chinese companies? It's quite skewed in some ways, and I'm kind of interested in how you guys see that.
I mean, Libra, I haven't done a lot of research on the Libra announcement yet, but I think my understanding is it's more of a retail. It's B2C, so I mean, corporates are not going to get involved in that at this point, right? So again, it's hopefully going to help the unbanked. Everyone who's on Facebook may not have a bank account that's really usable, so maybe this is an opportunity for the unbanked. So again, it goes to that actually that initial idea. Blockchain, Bitcoin was going to help all the unbanked in the world. Well, it didn't really do that, right? It helped the people who already had smartphones and already were sophisticated enough to mine Bitcoin. But I think blockchain as a technology does offer a potential for cheaper accounts, managing transactions in a much more efficient manner that may make it useful for someone like a Facebook or someone with a massive ecosystem to be able to do payments, to be able to transfer value. But it just, again, no idea on really why the banks haven't embraced it yet. I mean, maybe they're talking about it only being live next year, so there's still plenty of time.
This gentleman here.
The idea of blockchain is quite abstract to me still, but I have my understanding is that it's a bit like Google document, right? Like in that the data is shared and updated in the same space with the people you permit. Can you explain what's the difference between Google document and blockchain?
I mean, I sort of talked about it a little bit earlier. I mean, Google Documents is actually very similar to blockchain or to Bitcoin, right? Traditional blockchain where you share the information with everyone in the room. So if I say I'm going to pay you $20 and everyone in the room hears it, I can't later say, no, I never said that, right? That's like Google Docs, right? And so that's one of the challenges of a permissionless blockchain where everyone can see all the data. And again, one of the ways for enterprises, businesses to leverage the potential of blockchain is a permission blockchain. So I only share the data, the percentage of data in my Google worksheet that pertains to a transaction that two of us do. So it's not my whole database.
So it's like you put in the email of the person you want to share with.
But it's even more than that, because if Google Docs, they see everything, right? Everyone sees everything. And that's more like traditional broadcast blockchain. Everyone sees everything, right? Distributed ledger is, again, if you look at Bitcoin, blockchain as a consensus mechanism, everyone sees it, and the base layer technology is distributed ledger technology. Distributed ledger technology is a way of sharing data with a shared database. It doesn't necessarily mean broadcasting it to anyone. And so a permission blockchain can be a way of sharing data without sharing the whole Google document. So I'm only sharing one cell of that Google document between us with privacy, with encryption. That would be a distributed ledger, different than sharing the whole database.
And can you also permit some person to edit the document and only some people to edit and read only?
So some people can read, some people can change it. You can have people that are verifiers of the document, of that data. So again, consensus can be done as a broadcast, which is blockchain, or it can be specific consensus about the veracity of that information, the originality of that information, and even the person doing the consensus or the entity doing that consensus may not necessarily need to see that information. By encryption, with a technological, they can manage to confirm that this transaction is unique without even knowing the actual data. Zero knowledge proof. So this takes Google Documents to the next level, right, in terms of how companies can work together, because companies don't want to share everything. That's not the way the real world works.
May I add something? We work with Colorado platform because of the smart contract ability. Because in trade finance, it's very important that everybody put in their parts of the transactions. And you maybe Carl can explain about smart contract better than I do, but the reason that it works better than or more than Google document is because of the smart contract capability. It's not about the contract, but it's about the business rules that everybody agrees. And when the parties execute it according to what we agree, what should be in the contract, then all the data can be generated and shared among others. So it's not just the plain data that we share, but it's also according to the business rules that we agree upfront.
Actually, I'd like to ask a follow-up question. So internally at Bangkok Bank, how did you come across blockchain as a technology that could address trade finance? Was this something that was driven internally, or did it come from R3, or how did this initiative begin? And then also on that note, where did the education sort of within the bank develop?
As I said earlier, the pain in trade finance is around for over 100 years. So people have to go through all this pain of manual processing of paperwork. And we try different ways to make it work. So we do the same thing but faster, but that is not the way it should work. And when we joined R3 in 2016 or so, in R3 they have different themes, and there are like trade finance, payments. So we, trade finance team, we join R3 themes to identify what are the pain points in trade finance, which are a lot from end to end, from the buyer to the seller. And we identify what can be the process that blockchain can help address. So all the banks that Carl just mentioned, we get together. We work very well under the pain, under the challenge. And then we identify what are the solutions that we can use. And we have the vendor who are also very knowledgeable. We work with different kind of vendor. We work with the vendor who know about cryptography very well. So after we identify the pain points and we address and we agree, because end-to-end is a lot of pain points, we try to address one by one. So the solution that we think is ready to go to test is completely different than what we did 2 years ago.
They had again, it was a chance for put together in each theme a working group. And the working group had up to 20, 30 banks all discussing what their pain points were. And everyone was slightly different. They have slightly different customers. I have commodity customers. I have finished good customers. I have brands. And so, again, putting together working groups. And again, we've done over 100 pilots, proof of concepts over the last couple of years. And many of them have failed, right? It didn't work, right? But it didn't work, we learned something too, right? It failed, or it didn't really help anything. Okay, well, let's not focus on that. So again, it's working through the collaboration. You know, even a failed test means you learn something, and it's shared among the whole community. So the whole community, the education level of the whole community sort of rose up together.
Okay, great. So we only have a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to get some final thoughts from each of the panelists. So Pong Bokker, if I could start with yourself, do you have anything you want to share with the audience, key takeaways for blockchain and trade finance?
As previously mentioned, we have to continue to study on this new technology and try to prove that it is workable and is trusted by everyone. So we can get a new era of automation.
So for me, I think get in and try. So fail fast and learn fast, and then try again.
I think it's all about collaboration, right? It's a team sport. And again, something like a bank like Bangkok Bank is very forward-looking. Not only do they want to be competitive, better than all the other banks in their ecosystem, but they're all willing to share, right? Because the whole ecosystem will rise up. You still need to be unique, but by sharing and working with other banks as well, they're very forward thinking to bring blockchain to the fore, to make it work. You have to collaborate, and so collaboration is really the key word.
Okay, fantastic. So I think that's about it for time. So can you join me in thanking our esteemed panelists for their thoughts today on blockchain and trade finance? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all the speakers and the moderator as well. This was brilliant. That we have to keep trying